Rump, the fairly true tale of Rumpelstiltskin. Chapter 3. The Greedy Miller and His Daughter. I woke as the village bell chimed for the mining day to begin. Gran was still sleeping, so I took some dry bread and a little goat cheese and walked outside. Pixies instantly flew at me, chirping and screeching. I staggered and swatted at them. I stepped in nothing's poop. Such is my destiny. A gnome ran right in front of me and nearly knocked me off of my feet. He chanted, "Message for Bertrand, message for Bertrand," over and over. He wouldn't stop until he found Bertrand. Gnomes are very useful in the kingdom, especially in the village where most people can't read any letters. Gran made me learn some, but gnomes love to spread news and deliver messages. They have some kind of sense that lets them know when they've reached the right person, and they won't stop until they do. More gnomes were emerging from their holes in the ground, eager to gather messages and deliver them to the rightful recipients. Gnomes had little holes all over the village, in the middle of the road, between roots of trees, and on the edges of rocks. They looked just like rabbit holes, but supposedly gnomes all led to a large underground cavern where they kept hordes of food. That's what we all guessed, since gnomes are quite chubby, but you never see them eating above ground. Frederick and Bruno once tried to dig down their hole, but gave up after they dug 12 feet and still couldn't see a thing. The mines were a nightmare that day. My finger throbbed, and so did my head. Frederick and Bruno thought it would be hilarious to throw pebbles at my head every time they brought dirt into their salsas. The pixies pestered me all day. I hoped it was a sign that the great amounts of gold were in the mud, but I didn't find any. When the mining day was done, everyone walked together toward the mill. Today was rations day. I walked behind Red while my stomach rumbled in each footstep with the chant, "Food, food, food." When we arrived at the mill, there was lots of shouting. Old Rupert was shaking his fist in the miller's face. "You're a filthy liar, you cheat! Sacks of gold I've mined. I've earned 10 times as much grains as this." Old Rupert hollered. Rupert was a rickety old man, barely able to walk, yet he still worked with a pickaxe in the mines. "Up the honor of my name, good Rupert," the miller said in his oily voice. "I've given what is fairly yours. It always seems less after the grinding." "Hogwash! I find lots of gold, and look. You call this fair?" Rupert shook the flour sack at the miller, then turned around and shook it at the villagers. There couldn't have been enough flour to make 2 loaves of bread. "Times are hard," said the miller. "We all must tighten the belt." He laughed, and his big belly laughed with him. Such a good joke for a fat miller with 10 plump children. "You dirty cheat! Rotten swindler!" "Now, Rupert," said the miller with a bit of warning, "that kind of ingratitude won't work in your favor. Suppose next week there weren't any rations for you at all." Rupert went silent. Finally, he hobbled all the way down the road, muttering curses loudly enough for all to hear. The next woman took her meager rations without a word, and the rest of the villagers did too. Gran always says that the miller Oswald is a cheat. The royal tax collector doesn't like to come to the mountain any more than he has to, so he simply sends up carts of full food and supplies and gives Oswald charge of the rations from our gold to distribute as he sees fits. Gran says Oswald takes more than his fair share. But what could we do? We weren't mining much gold lately, and we didn't really know how much food was stored. Only Oswald did. Oswald decided how much food we had earned for our work. The whole village was hungry, except for the miller and his family. Could a name make you greedy like mine made me small? As I drew closer to the front of the line, a whirling motion caught my eye. The miller's daughter, Opal, was spinning outside on the porch. I watched, transfixed. I studied how her foot pushed on the treadle and how her hands rhythmically fed the wool. The wool thinned and tightened and transformed into yarn as if it were magic. "You enjoy spinning, don't you?" The miller was right in front of me now, and everyone else had gone. How long had I been staring at Opal? I'm just curious how it works, I said. The miller lifted his bushy eyebrows. Spinning is a woman's work. She could show you. For a price. He lifted 2 bags of food, our rations. I wanted to say yes. Something inside of me ached to spin. My foot twitched with the rhythm of Opal spinning. My fingers itched to feed one thing through the wheel and watch it transform to another before my very eyes. I almost said yes. Then I thought of Gran. I could starve myself for weeks to learn to spin. But I couldn't betray Gran. Oh, I said, no, I just like to watch. Yes, said the miller, my Opal is the jewel of the mountain. She will marry well. My face heated. I wasn't talking about her. Why would I look at her like that? Sure, she was pretty with her golden hair and ruby lips. Hans Jacob had offered the miller 4 sheep and a milking cow for her hand in marriage. It was a fortune. But the miller flatly refused. Opal was worth much more than that, he said. Hans Jacob left with his head low, and everyone thought the miller was crazy. Did he expect a royal marriage? Just at that moment, Opal looked up at me. I noticed something I hadn't before. She was beautiful, yes, but her face looked sort of blank. Opal stared at me, then flickered out of her tongue, and it wound around her mouth like a frog catching flies. Not so beautiful. She did it again. A kind of nervous tick. I wondered if Hans Jacob had noticed these things. Maybe they would make him feel better. The miller placed my rations on my feet. Find a little extra gold, and I'll have Opal show you how to spin. She's a fine spinner, but I've known some who possess a more natural talent. He looked down at me with a strange smile on his face. Was he being kind? I'd never known the miller to be kind. I took the rations home, but Gran was resting, so there was nothing to eat but a bit of cheese. I fed Milk and Nothing and the chickens, and they all bleated and brayed and clucked at me for more. A pixie flew in my face, and a gnome under my feet, chanting, "Message for Gertrude, message for Gertrude," in an urgent voice. Another baby, probably. Suddenly, the world felt crowded and noisy. I didn't want to be around anyone or anything. I just wanted to be alone. And there's only one place on the mountain where you can count on being alone: the woods. Most people avoid the woods because of the trolls and ogres. It's also home to the Witch of the Woods. And witches are best left alone. I heard of a witch who liked to catch children and cook them for her supper. And Gran told me of a witch who stole a baby right from her parents' arms and locked her in a tower where she could never get out. What a horrible thing to steal a baby. But the biggest danger of a witch was her magic. There was no telling what terrors a witch could manage. A bruise storm right over your head, or turn you into a fat pig to eat you for dinner. As skinny as I was, I didn't want to take any chances, so I didn't go far. Just far enough to be surrounded by tall trees, where there were no one from the village who could see me. Here and there were tree stumps from the woodcutter. He was the only person who ever went deep into the woods. I sat on one of the stumps. Through the trees, I could see out over the valley where the kingdom lay. The house looked so tiny, I could cover them with my thumb. Beyond the houses was the king's castle. That took both my hands to cover. After that, there was nothing but roads that led to the village, yonder and beyond. Just as we don't name our animals, we don't name the places where we live. We simply call them what they are, or where they are. The mountain, the kingdom, yonder. I think it's boring. But I guess we put so much thought and energy into naming babies, we don't have any left over. A pixie landed on my hand, and I swatted it away. It sparkled and chirped and flew at me again. This pixie had blue hair and large, glassy wings. He looked so sweet and harmless that I forgot to sense and stuck my finger out to him, as if he were a tame bird. He landed on me and giggled. He had such a smug and teasing look on his face, like he knew a secret about me. Maybe he knew where all the gold was buried. 2 more pixies landed on me. I brushed them off, gently. They darted away, but then came back. One landed on my shoulder, and another on my ear, and then another, and then another. They danced on my head, my arms, my fingers, squealing and chirping. I tried to shake them off until I lost my balance and fell off the tree stump. The pixies attacked. They shot at me like an explosion of many-colored sparks. One bit my arm. More bit my hands. I kicked and thrashed to get them off of me. Buzzards! I screamed, but they shrieked and continued to converge on me like a flying army. Another one bit my neck. Then something showered down on top of me, and where I opened my mouth to yell, I got a mouthful of dirt. More dirt came down. It was raining dirt. The pixies shrieked louder than ever and flew away in a swarm. When I got the dirt out of my eyes, they disappeared, and I looked up to see a girl. It was Red. She stared at me, all curious, and said, "Are you made of gold or something?"